You all know it's NCRE official. So it's around 4 p.m. on your watch, and regularly from 4 p.m. till 5 p.m. we come up with our special sessions for all of you. So once again, I welcome you in our sessions on Cyber Jaagrookta Diwas series. Here we discuss on certain important and eminent topics for everyone. And the topic of discussion for the day would be physical and mental wellness in the digital space. As we all know that in the digital space, it becomes very important for us to take care of our mental health along with our physical health, because when we are bombarded by information from all sources, the verification, the validation, what to trust, what not to trust, it becomes a big point of contemplation. At the same time, we need to take good care of ourselves. So, highlighting more on this aspect, we are also joined by our today's guest. So, allow me to introduce you with our today's guest for the conversation. Here we have with us Dr. Yatanpal Singh Balhara, sir. Namaskar, sir. Good evening.
Namaskar.
Sir, very warm welcome in the session. Well, I would like to take our viewers across your journey. Sir is currently serving as Professor of Psychiatry at All India Institute ODC. Apart from this, he is also a member of desk at the rate ciet.nic.in. So, sir, let's begin the conversation.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, and once again, I welcome you to this session. As introduced by the introducer, we are going to discuss the wellness in digital space. And when we talk of wellness, we'll focus both on the physical as well as mental aspect of it. Now, before we begin discussing what are the mental health and physical health consequences when we are engaging in digital space, I think we need to be familiar with this interaction, that why it is important to focus on wellness. The impact that we have, both in terms of our physical health as well as our mental well-being, is going to for the purposes of education, for recreation, for entertainment, and even to connect with people whom we like to connect with. And this is of particular relevance for the students because a lot of information related initiatives are now shifting to this digital space. So it makes a lot of sense that we should be aware of this interaction, and we should be also ensuring. By motive, what I mean is that we have specific reasons to access or to enter or venture into this digital space. What these motives mean is that whenever we are accessing any digital space or using internet or any mobile devices, it has its own implications. What that means is, since we are talking about a two-way interaction, this interaction is going to affect us or impact us in multiple ways. Now, we might be aware of some of these impacts because we are consciously being made aware of them all the time. But there are some impacts and implications which may not be in our conscious mind, which might get some news on what is happening around us at this point in time. And when we are able to access that information, we are satisfied that we got what we wanted or what we were looking for. So that is a desirable consequence. Similarly, when we are, for example, playing an online game, our purpose is to maybe entertain ourselves. And that again is a desirable consequence. But at the same time, since this interaction involves a two-way process, there can be impacts and implications which are undesirable. And what that means is that we did not intend these to happen. And many times we probably even didn't think that these might happen, but they do happen. And this is exactly what we are going to focus on today's session, that how we can identify, how we can avoid, and how we can manage these undesirable implications, especially in context of physical and mental wellness whenever we are accessing a digital space or a digital device. Now, these undesirable implications and impacts can be of different kinds. In fact, there are many categories in which we can divide them. This is just an arbitrary categorization, just to simplify our understanding into these. And as you can see here, I have listed quite a few categories. These include categories of health, which includes physical health as well as mental health. It includes academics, because as students, that is an important part of our life. It also includes interpersonal issues or interpersonal situations and contexts. And finally, there can be even financial implications. And all these implications are something that are undesirable to begin with, but we might not be cognizant or we might not be aware of these, and that these can happen and how they can impact our wellness. So that is what we are going to learn in the first section of this presentation, that what are these adverse implications in these different domains that we need to be aware of, that we need to be cognizant of whenever we are accessing any digital space. So let's begin with the first category, and the first one happens to be our physical health. And by physical, I mean something that has to do with our body. Of course, our brain, our mind is also part of our body, but I'll talk about those implications specifically in the next section. So at this point in time, we will learn about what could be the negative implications of accessing digital space on our physical health. Now, these implications can happen because of three factors which are at play. One of these is that we might be using the digital space excessively. What that means is we are spending a lot of all act together in different combinations to produce eventually the kind of effects that our physical body can experience, and these are not pleasant effects. These effects are detrimental to our physical health and well-being. So what are these physical health implications? The first one, I like to focus on the impact of excessive use of these devices on our joints. And there are two main joints that I'll focus on this slide. The first one being the wrist joint, and the second one being the joints in our thumb. Now, you might have heard of the term called carpal tunnel syndrome. Now, this is a condition in which a person develops pain in the wrist because of the wrong or improper positioning of the wrist while you are using a keyboard or a mouse. This is a common problem that people experience. It can be very painful, it can restrict certain movements, and this is an issue that happens when your positioning of your hand is not appropriate when you are using these devices. Second, when you are using certain mobile devices, for example, smartphones and tablets, we use our thumbs a lot. And again, if we are using it excessively, or if the positioning is not correct, we can start experiencing pain in our joints in the thumb as well. So these are the two joints in our upper limbs that can get negatively impacted because of improper and extended use while we are accessing the digital space. That's not all the joints that can impact it. There are other joints as well. For example, the joints in our spinal cord, and especially two zones, the one in the neck and the one in our lower back. They are also quite prone to adverse impact if our posture is not correct, if we are not seated correctly, if our back is not straight when we are accessing a mobile device or a laptop or even a desktop. So people can experience pain, there can be restriction in movement, and we may not be even able to perform some of our daily activities because of this discomfort. So that's the second kind of problem that can happen in our physical body because of excessive and improper posturing while we are using these devices. People who look at screens for an extended period of time, and these screens include screens of our smartphones, laptops, tablets, even TVs. Some of us can experience headaches. There can be multiple reasons. It may be because of prolonged exposure to the screen. It can also be because the font that we are trying to read on the screen is not legible. It's pixelated, and we might have to strain a lot to focus on the content that we are trying to read there. And this can eventually end up into headache for some of us. So that's another physical complaint that we can experience because of excessive use of screens. Ocular or eye-related symptoms are also common because the first point of interaction that we have when we are consuming any content is through our eyes. And it's through our eyes that all that content actually reaches our brain, where we make sense of what we are looking at. And there is this particular term that's called computer vision syndrome. Now, this is a set of clinical features that tends to develop when people look at screen for extended period of time without taking breaks in between. So what that means is, if you keep staring at a screen for an extended period of time without shifting your gaze or without blinking in between, you can have eye irritation, which includes symptoms such as dryness of eye, itchiness in eye, and even red eyes. It can also lead to blurring of vision, which means that you can't see things clearly, they appear blurred to you. There can be headaches, there can be pain in your back, pain in your neck, and muscle aches of different kinds. So this is a cluster of signs and symptoms that happens because of excessive exposure to screens for extended period of time without shifting your gaze in between or without taking breaks in between. Oral or ear health is another concern, something that we don't talk as often as other health concerns, but again it's a very important area that we need to focus on. By that what I mean is that when we are exposed to loud noises, and particularly for extended period of times, we can have what is called as hearing loss or hearing damage. Now it depends what is the level of noise, what is the duration of exposure, but this hearing loss can be temporary. What that means is that for some time your hearing goes down or it gets hampered, and it recovers after some time if the noise exposure is removed. But at times it can be permanent, which means that it doesn't recover spontaneously if it is lost once. Especially people who use headphones that cover the ears and then use volumes that are quite high, especially higher than 80 decibel. This can lead to different hearing impairments, as I described just now. Another important area that digital space interferes in terms of our well-being is our sleep-wake cycle. What that means is that you would have noticed that usually you have a tendency to go to bed at a particular time and you tend to wake up at a particular time in the morning next day. So our body follows this rhythm which makes us go to sleep and then helps us get up in the morning to get going with the day. Now sleep is very important. Sleep performs multiple functions. It's rejuvenating for our body and our brain. There is a lot of activity that goes on in our body and our mind during our sleep. There are lots of hormones that get released which are important for our growth of our mind as well as our body. So if there is a disturbance in this sleep-wake cycle, and this disturbance can be in many ways. One of the ways it can happen is that a person starts sleeping later than usual. For example, you might be sleeping at 10 p.m. at night, but there are nights when you sleep at say 11 p.m. or even 12 a.m. that is late in night. That's one kind of disturbance. And the second disturbance is that you don't wake up at the usual time. You might be used to waking up at say 6:30 in the morning, but now you are waking up later during the day. That's the second kind of disturbance. The third kind of disturbance could be that usually when we sleep, we tend to sleep for an extended period of time. But in some of us, when there is a disturbance in our sleep, we may tend to wake up multiple times in between as well. So all these disturbances in our sleep-wake cycle, they can result from excessive and inappropriate engagement with the digital space, and it can interfere with so many biological systems that our body and our mind are running all the time. Eating habits is another important domain that we need to be concerned about. Eating actually gives us all the nutrients, the macronutrients, the micronutrients that our body needs to grow and perform. And it's always very important for us to eat healthy. There are instances when people who are excessively engaged with the digital space, they can neglect their eating or food intake. And again, it can happen in many ways. One of the ways could be that since you are busy watching something on your smartphone or your laptop, you may ignore your meals. That means that you may postpone them or at times even avoid them. You may want to eat in a hurry so that you can go back to what you were doing using your digital device. Other times you may rely on eating food that is readily available or pre-cooked or pre-prepared, so to say. And many times this food is not nutritious food. It might have excess calories and little nutrients otherwise, and that can interfere with the growth and the health of your body as well as your mind. One of the consequences of this could be excessive weight gain. Now there are multiple factors again which are at play here. The first one being that you're not eating healthy, you might be consuming too many calories, and at the same time, since you are sedentary, sedentary means that you are just sitting and looking at a screen while you are using your devices, you may not be having adequate physical activity. You may be ignoring the physical exercises, and as a result you are consuming more calories, you are burning less calories, and eventually you end up putting on excessive weight. Now we know excessive weight is a significant risk factor for many diseases, including the endocrinal disorders like diabetes mellitus, hypertension, cardiovascular problems, and it can be a risk factor for certain kind of cancers as well. So this again is an important physical health implication of excessive use of digital space that we need to be aware of. Now shifting on to mental health. Like our physical health, mental health can also be impacted adversely by improper use of digital space. And again, when it comes to mental health, there are two kind of concerns that I would like to focus on. The first one is about our well-being. What that means is that we all want to be mentally fit or mentally healthy, but there are certain adverse implications of excessive use of digital space that can impact our mental health by affecting its well-being. That's one set of problems that can happen, and we will discuss what these are. The second set of problems that can happen in this domain is regarding the safety. Safety both from the physical perspective as well as from the mental perspective. And there are certain implications of being in digital space that can be detrimental to our safety as well. And I'll come to that point in a while. But first, let me talk about how mental well-being can be impacted by improper or excessive use of digital spaces. There are multiple factors that are at play here. For example, when you are accessing a digital space, you may encounter what is called as cyberbullying. Now, cyberbullying is something very similar to the bullying that we know of that happens in the in-person setting or the physical world, where an individual or a group of individuals they have repetitive, hostile, or aggressive behavior against another person. The same thing can happen in the cyberspace as well. For example, a particular person or a group of people may post adverse comments or hateful comments or abusive comments against a person. They may exclude or omit this person from the groups that they are member of, and that escalates into difficult or problematic situations for this person, and he or she can eventually end up experiencing adverse mental health consequences. So that's one kind of concern that we can have while we are being in cyberspace and we are not cautious or careful. The second concern can be in context of cyber stalking. What that means is that at times when you are online, there are people around you who may use internet or other electronic means to stalk or harass you. They may track you while you are online. They may follow you. They may send messages to you. They may post content to you which you don't like, and it can become very harassing and very troublesome for you, and it can lead to a lot of stress and other adverse mental health consequences as well at times. The third concern in terms of safety related issues is what is called as cyber grooming, which refers to a process where a person tries to befriend another person. there can be consequences which can impact our well-being. For example, people who use digital spaces excessively or for inappropriate reasons, and I'll discuss what I mean by those inappropriate reasons. They are more likely to experience depressive features and anxiety features. Uh, there is another situation where there are people who primarily are having some of these depressive or anxiety features, and they may start using digital spaces excessively. So it's a two-way relation where both the excessive use and problematic use can be the primary factor, and the other way around, depression or anxiety can be the primary factor, but each of them can lead to each other. So there can be a vicious cycle at times, which may be difficult to break unless you take professional help. So that's the kind of impact that it can have on our mental well-being. In addition, the kind of content that we access while we are in digital space also shapes our psyche as well as our personality, particularly during the years when we are growing up, as human beings, as individuals, when our attitudes, our beliefs, our behaviors are taking shape. So it has been seen in research that if adolescents, they are exposed to the violence and aggression while they are online, which may be because you are playing a violent online game, or maybe you are watching video or content which includes violence, it can impact you. It can lower your, it can lower your threshold for not accepting violence against others. It can raise your threshold of experiencing discomfort when you are in a situation where violence is being committed. So that again is a very negative or a very detrimental kind of effect that can happen if we are not using digital space with the right kind of content.
Of course, sir, here you are highlighting certain significant information for all our viewers. I would just like to inform that in the conversation we still have about half an hour left. So with regard to this
Counter, and these are the problems that can happen because of excessive and problematic internet use. What that means is that we are using internet for any purpose or any activity, but our pattern of use is either excessive in terms of the amount of time that we are spending, or problematic because it is leading to certain adverse or negative consequences in our lives. For example, there may be scenarios where we start using internet for a particular purpose, playing games, accessing social media, and we may start encountering what is called as loss of control. And we should stop playing those games. What are the situations which are not appropriate for us to engage in those behaviors? So there is that loss of control. Along with that, we can experience neglect of alternate activities. We have responsibilities in our daily lives. We are supposed to perform different roles. And since we are excessively preoccupied in a particular activity in the digital space, we may start neglecting them. As a student, you may neglect your studies, you may neglect your personal care, you may neglect your interpersonal relations, and it can be detrimental to the tune that you may start experiencing negative consequences. And despite of you experiencing these negative consequences, you may not be able to stop, or you may not be able to change your behavior. So this is something that's going close to what is called as addiction. Addiction is something that is beyond our control, something that we can't regulate, which is detrimental to our own wellness and well-being, and something that we can't stop despite of knowing that it's not of use, it's not any good to us. So that is what we mean by these addictions. And in fact, if you look at the medical diagnostic systems, they have started including these conditions as diagnosable medical conditions. What that means is the way you get diagnosed with diabetes or hypertension or tuberculosis or heart diseases, depressive disorders. Now there are certain mental health conditions which are related to our presence in the digital space, and the one such condition that is there in the diagnostic systems is gaming disorder. What that means is there are people around us who may be engaged in gaming, and that includes online gaming as well, which is excessive, which is problematic, and which has led to the extent that it's become an addiction for some of us. So that again is a mental health issue that can happen because of excessive and problematic engagement with the digital space. Academic problems, another important area, especially for the students. People who use or engage in digital spaces excessively, it can impact their academic performance. You may start losing interest in your studies. It can impact your concentration. You are awake, accessing the digital space. And if the problem is severe, it can lead to even students failing in the exams. So those are the different kinds of academic problems that one can face. Again, they start gradually, but they can escalate to the extent that the students may not even be able to study uh, even as little as what is needed to just get passing marks in the exam. So that again is a realistic possibility that happens, and we encounter such cases. Other relatives. So eventually what it means is that you're not able to invest in those relations, and as a result those relations, they start to fall apart, and it leads to difficulties, challenges, or problems with people. Which are promoted as games, but they involve elements of gambling as well. So you might put in some money hoping that you will win a jackpot, and you may eventually end up losing money. So there can be financial difficulties as well that you can face if you are not using the digital space intelligently and you are engaging in the wrong kind of activities or behaviors. So we have discussed that there can be multiple adverse consequences that can happen. These are related to our physical health, mental health. It will lead to problems with the parents. They may circumvent them, and how we can prevent them. But before we learn how to go about avoiding or preventing, I like to focus on one simple principle. And that principle is that it's a very simple mathematical equation, and that we all have fixed amount of time in our days, and that's 24 hours. So we all get 24 hours, and it's up to us how we spend that time. So the more time we spend using internet or our mobile devices, the less time remains available for us to do anything and everything else. So we have to do activities of our personal care. We have to do eating, sleeping, interacting with people around us, studying, playing. So we are supposed to do so many things during our day and during those 24 hours only. But if we start using mobile phones and internet, and if we keep on gradually increasing the amount of time we are spending using them, we are bound to be left with only small amount of time to complete rest of the activities. And this invariably means we will either avoid some of these activities or we will cut down their time. And this is what actually impacts our wellness in the long run. The less and less amount of time that is available to us to engage in things that are good for us, that are healthy for us. Now, how do we detect that we are heading towards a problem? How do we detect that when we are accessing the digital spaces, are we on the right track, or there is something that's going to go wrong very soon? And there are many things that can guide us. I'll offer you some simple so-called red flag signs or indicators that you can use yourself to ask yourself that whether I am experiencing this, and that could be an indicator that probably you are heading in the wrong direction. Of course, the first one is the amount of time spent in digital space. This is quite simple. If you are spending more than what you should be, then probably there is a problem. Now there is no cutoff that I can give you. Okay, beyond these many hours is more, and less than that is less. It all depends on the context. And a very simple thing is that if you are not able to find adequate time to sleep, if you are not able to find adequate time to eat, if you are not able to find adequate time to study, if you are not able to find adequate time to talk to people around you, that means you are spending excessive or more than what you can afford while you are being in digital space. So that's a very important indicator that probably your engagement in digital world is more than what it should be. Second, I mentioned earlier, we all have reasons and motives behind internet use. We can use internet for multiple purposes: information, education, recreation, entertainment, just passing time, communication. So please take a look at for what purpose are you using internet. Using internet for information seems fine. Using it for education again seems fine. It's okay to use it for entertainment and communication as well. But please be cognizant that what proportion of your internet use is for activities that you need to control or regulate. So that motive with which you use or access digital space is very important. The third point is expectation. So whenever we do any activity or behavior, we might have certain expectations from ourselves and the people around us. So for example, when you are posting something on a social media, the intent may be that you expect that people should read or what you want to share, or your expectation could be that they should like as well and forward it as well. So if your expectation is more than what it should be or being unrealistic, that again kind of signifies that probably your engagement with the digital space needs a revisit and you need to re-evaluate your relation with the social media. If you use digital space as a substitution for anything that you can do in-person setting, for example, if you can communicate to a person face to face, sitting in the same room, and you prefer interacting with them online, that probably again is an indicator that you might be headed in the wrong direction. So please make it a point that don't substitute what you can do in physical or in-person setting with online activities if you want to cut down on your time that you spend being in digital space. If you observe there is a change in your interaction pattern, the amount of time that you used to spend with people around you, your parents, your siblings, your friends, or even if the amount of time is not going down, but the kind of focus or attention you are able to give them while you are sitting with them, if there is a change in that pattern, that again signifies that yes, there is something wrong that's going to happen or is already started to happen. If others comment on your behavior and they suggest or advise you that you should cut down on your presence in digital space, and if that annoys you, if it makes you angry or hostile or it makes you irritable, that again is an indicator that you are not liking when people are trying you to control your own behavior, and that again is a sign that something is not right and you need to think about it. So there are many ways of detecting possible problematic engagement in these behaviors. The amount of time, the motives, the expectations that you have, change in your preferences, change in your interaction patterns, and your reactions when you are restricted. So if there is any one or more of these, you should pause, you should relook your interaction with the digital space, and you should think that you need to do something about it. You need to make certain efforts so that the things can fall in place. Now, what is it that we can do? Again, there are a lot of things that we can do. In fact, I'll give you some very simple suggestions that you might find helpful when you are engaging in digital space. Many of our day-to-day life, day-to-day living. So what that means is that you need to practice this on a day-to-day basis. Maybe you need to make it part of your daily routine, and that is how you are going to be safe as well as healthy while you are engaging with the digital world around you. What you need to focus primarily is this interaction between you and internet or the mobile devices. So there are some do's, there are some don'ts that you need to be aware of, that you need to be mindful of, so that you can ensure that whenever you venture into the digital space, you don't encounter any adverse consequences, be it for your physical health, your mental health, your academic performance, financially, or even for interpersonal reasons. So basically, you need to be aware of your interaction with this world around you, and at the same time you need to keep in mind, or you need to keep into consideration certain important aspects of this interaction which can help you avoid the problems in your interaction. So the first one is what is called as age appropriateness of your interaction. What that means is, as we understand, or we tend to think of situations and things differently. We are able to perceive the risks differently. We are able to interpret the meanings differently. So a 5-year-old child or an 18-year-old adolescent, when two of them are faced with the same situation, their reactions, their behaviors are different. So what is important is that when you access any content online, it has to be age appropriate. You should only access that content that is meant to be consumed or used by a person of your age. There is a lot around us. There is a lot of information. There is a lot of content. There is a lot going on in this world. But that doesn't mean that all of that is meant for me. And by me, I mean all of us. There is some content which is probably not meant for my age, that is meant for a different age, that may be meant for a different person. So we should always be very cautious of what we are accessing. It is simple in some ways and a bit complex in certain other ways. And it is simple in certain ways. For example, when you have to access a social media platform, it has certain rules in terms of what should be your minimum age for you to register. In fact, for certain games as well, there are restrictions that a person less than a particular age should not be playing that game, and we should respect that. And these restrictions are meant to help us, because for us to kind of engage with this kind of content in an appropriate way, we need to be of a particular age. The same is true for OTT platforms. There are series, there are movies that are available online which are restricted for certain age groups, and there are reasons behind that. So we must respect that, and we should avoid venturing into those contents which are not appropriate for our age. And this is just not age in terms of a number. This age is the level of mental maturation that we have, so that we can make the right sense of what we are looking at, and we can make the right decisions when we are trying to use that information. So that is the first thing that we must be aware of.
And so before we dive further into the conversation, I would like to apprise all our viewers that we have the last 5 to 7 minutes left in this interactive session. So drop your queries now itself in the comment section. Yasam.
Okay, thank you. The second point that I like to suggest you is that please be aware of the timing of your interaction with the digital world or the digital space. Please don't venture into the space during the time when you are supposed to sleep. Please don't do it when you are supposed to eat. Don't do it when you are supposed to study. Don't do it when you are supposed to go out and play in a playground. So please don't let the digital space intrude into other important aspects of your daily routine. And that can be very easy. Have a very simple timetable. Have time for everything, including these activities, which may include gaming, social media, using internet for getting information, but at specified times only. So that again is very important. Don't use internet as a substitute. Whatever you can do in in-person setting or in the physical world around you, make it a point and prefer to do it that way rather than doing it an online way. This is a very simple technique or a trick to cut down on your online time. So the more you shift to the in-person or offline setting, the less you will be doing it online. So that's a very simple mathematical equation again. Make a daily routine, make a timetable. You all are used to having it. At least at some point in time, we all have made timetables. Having a daily routine is again giving structure to ourselves, telling ourselves that, okay, it is 9 a.m. and this is what I'm supposed to do. It is 4 p.m. and this is what I'm supposed to do. So please ensure, incorporate this simple technique so that you know what you are supposed or expected to do at a particular point in time. Ensure your posture is correct when you are seated at your computer desk or you are using a laptop or looking at a mobile phone. Sit correctly, don't slouch, your back should be straight, your elbow should be making an angle of 90 degrees, the screen should be slightly lower than your line of sight. So please make these simple adjustments so that you don't experience the physical discomfort. Do not keep sitting for a long time. Keep changing your posture, shift between sitting and standing as much as you can so that you don't strain your back and neck a lot while you are using these devices. Don't slouch, sit up straight, keep your back straight. It will avoid the back pain and the neck pain that you might have if you are not sitting properly. When you are using a mobile phone, please don't try to look down. Try to bring the phone up and try to look straight so that you don't have to put extra strain on your muscles in the neck. So that again is a very simple tip that you can make use of to avoid the physical pain. Again, take breaks in between. Don't keep looking at a screen for a very long time. At least every 20 minutes, take a break. Get up, move around, come back, blink your eyes, look at a distant object so that you can defocus and your eye muscles can be relaxed. So that again can help you avoid the strain. Basically, what you need to do is you need to find a way to have a balanced and a healthy life so that everything that you need or want to do in your daily routine is there. You have time for everything, and that includes using your mobile devices and internet as well, but in a balanced and a systematic way. Finally, I'll mention that some of us might eventually end up having problems like mental health issues, physical issues, issues such as addictions. If you or anybody else around you has these problems, please advise them to seek formal help. Help is available and you can be benefited if you meet the right kind of consultants for that purpose. So in the conclusion, I would say that we must ensure that our interaction with internet remains safe and healthy so that we can make the best out of this great inventions that man has made, and we can make the most out of it as we are growing. So please ensure to be cognizant of your interaction with the digital space and ensure that you are safe and healthy while you are online. So with that, I'll stop. And if there are any questions, I'll be more than pleased to take those.
Of course, sir. So thank you so much for this informative session for all our viewers, and the session has turned out to be really productive because I could witness the number of beautiful comments that are pouring in the comment section of NCERT official. But due to paucity of time, we will not be able to continue the session. But as of now, sir, thank you so much for apprising our viewers about these minute yet necessary details. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you to all the viewers who have connected with NCERT for this particular live interactive session on physical and mental wellness in digital space. So I am pretty sure that you have kept a note of all the important points, the significant details that we have discussed in today's conversation. And just like our today's conversation for this particular program that we had for 4 to 5 p.m, we have another program for all of you. So stay connected to NCERT because our upcoming session is Sahyog, where we'll provide you more information regarding emotional well-being